Welcome to the show. I'm Jason Whitlock, and I'll tell you why we just got more proof the Patriots have a serious image problem.
And I'm Colin Cowherd, and I'll tell you why people need to stop blaming LeBron for the Cavs' playoff struggle. Speak for yourself on a Wednesday. Starts right now.
All right, hello and welcome. We're joined today by NBA champion Caron Butler and Fox NBA analyst Chris Broussard. Let's start in Boston, where LeBron dropped a 42-point triple-double last night, and it still wasn't enough to beat the Celtics, who rallied from a first-half deficit to win by 13 and take a 2-0 series lead. Even still, LeBron says he's not sweating it.
I'm not going to lose sleep over it. You go out and you lay everything on the line. At the end of the day, you can live with that. So, I'll recalibrate as far as how I can help this team continue to be successful. How I can do some things to make us be even more complete. And, the only way I probably won't get no sleep tonight if Kev don't get a question asked probably at the end of the day.
I'm looking at Dave. I said, don't do it, Dave.
So I'm going to lose a lot of sleep if someone doesn't ask him a question.
I can leave.
Cowherd, LeBron said he wasn't worried. Should he now be worried about these Boston Celtics?
Yeah, I mean, it's a math equation. Can you win 4 of 5 with an inferior coach and an inferior defense? It's hard. Cavs are going to win some games. Wouldn't be shocked if they won both games in Cleveland. But you got a Game 7 in Boston. You got to win 4 out of 5 games. And what we've seen through these playoffs is LeBron's great. He may have a bad game in series, but he doesn't get consistent support. And he's going to need to get consistent support for 4 straight games. I don't think it happens.
Oh, I'm glad to hear you say that because I listened to your radio show this afternoon, and it was interesting. Yesterday, Caron, you weren't here, but Broussard and Colin both told me yesterday that yesterday wasn't a must-win game. The Cavaliers, who cares if they lost last night? And now, Colin, you're acknowledging there's cause for concern.
It was the first time. Like, you know how you'll see a couple, you go to a dinner party and a couple kind of argues a little, and you're like, you see the divorce before the divorce? I'm watching LeBron. I'm watching the second half. I'm watching his Herculean effort, and they can't make any stops. And I'm like, the divorce is coming.
You also watched the Boston Celtics wear LeBron out. He was great early in the game. And then later in the game, not so great because he's carrying too much of a load, and he can't handle it. And, yeah, they should be worried, although, I never count LeBron out. Even down 2-0, I never count him out. But worried, hell yeah.
Well, look, I'm not saying they can't lose the series, but worried, panicked, oh, we're out of it, series is over. No way. You're going back to Cleveland where Boston's been bad on the road. 1-4 on the road. The one game they won against Philadelphia, the Sixers kind of just threw it away and gave it to them. And here's the thing, all those role players who are playing great, even the young stars in Boston, they won't play that well in Cleveland. Terry Rozier, 20 points a game in Boston in the playoffs, 13 on the road. He shoots 24% from 3 on the road, 45% in Boston. Al Horford goes from 20 points down to 12, 30% three-point shooting. Jaylen Brown scores less. Like, all those guys aren't going to play as well, and the Cleveland role players will play better. All the Cleveland has to do is get one game in Boston, one. And they can do it in 5 or 7. So I'm not worried if I'm Cleveland.
It's a lot of headlines, but here's the story. You look at the first series where you had the Indiana Pacers. That team still was inferior of LeBron. They had talent. Guys was having out-of-body performances, and they was okay with pushing the series 6 or 7. That's okay. Toronto, oh, my God, LeBron James. We know it's going to happen at some point, and he dominated the series. And then you run up against this young team of Thundercats, the Boston Celtics. They like, look, we show respect by showing none. And that's exactly what's happening. Those dudes believe in the system of Brad Stevens and what he got going, and they feel like they can realistically win this series in possible 5 games. That's their feeling, and you can see it in their play.
Don't you guys agree that if Indiana was just better situationally late, they would have beaten Cleveland? Boston's Indiana, exceptional situationally. I mean, Indiana had that series, a 2-1 lead, 4 minutes to go, had the ball, up by 4, And I like Nate McMillan. I didn't think he had a great series. They gave them trouble. They gave away 2 games.
They got more talent.
Yeah, I think Boston has more talent because, again, remember, Miles Turner was kind of MIA throughout the entire series. And then Oladipo disappeared for like 3 straight games. Overall, he had a good series, but there was 3 straight games where he played poorly. I don't, and I agree with Chris, they'll probably back off a little bit on the road. But I expect them to eventually be better on the road than what they've shown so far. These young guys are growing up right before our eyes. And yeah, will they be as good as they are at home? No, but will they be better than what they've been on the road previously? I say yes.
Well, look, Cleveland, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying they don't need to be somewhat concerned. I mean, this team is like Rocky Balboa. They don't go away. You can beat them, and Cleveland doesn't want that type of fight. Cleveland wants to hit you early like they did the Pacers, and when they got up on the Pacers, remember, they relaxed. They get a double-digit lead and kind of relax and let their foot off the gas. Pacers roar back, and now it's a 2-point game. They hit Toronto early. Toronto just submitted and fell. They're hitting Boston, and Boston just keeps coming. Cleveland doesn't want a 48-minute fight. So they do have some concerns. I'm just saying this series is far from over.
All right, so watching that last night, how did that punch affect you? I think you had them at 10%, Boston, a 10% chance of winning this series. Where you got them at now?
You had them at 10%?
Going into yesterday.
Going in.
Yes. But you have now I got them at like
49.
50. I mean, if I had to bet my life on it, I'd probably bet Boston.
At Buffalo Wild Wings, we'll admit that we often go overboard with our limited time offerings. We just can't help ourselves. Take our new signature sampler. For $15, you get wings and 3 shareable options like fried pickles or cheese curds. Then there's our aptly named over-the-top nachos, a literal mountain of crispy tortilla chips loaded with your choice of pulled pork or honey barbecue grilled chicken, corn, jalapenos, and more. Then top it all off with our new platinum margarita. Go overboard with us today at Buffalo Wild Wings. Wings, beer, sports. Available for a limited time while supplies last. Please drink responsibly.
All right, well, there's no question the Cavs are having their toughest season since LeBron returned 4 years ago. They are. Today, Brian Windhorst writes that the team is suffering from, quote, organizational fatigue caused by LeBron's whirlwind presence. Last night, Jeff Van Gundy seemed to notice it too, saying the Cavs eye-roll each other more than a couple in a bad marriage. Whitlock, you blame LeBron for the Cavs' dysfunction?
I'm not sure why Windhorst said organizational fatigue when he really meant LeBron fatigue. Just call it what it is. LeBron, this is what LeBron James does. Oh. He may be the greatest player we've ever seen, but this is what comes along with it as well.
All right.
Organizational fatigue and eye rolling and people tired of the stress and the running off of young players. And now the guy don't like playing with young people. And look at Tatum and Brown, these young people kicking his tail.
Is this another one of these segments where you tell me how much you love LeBron except for this?
I do love LeBron except for the organizational fatigue.
Yeah, by the way, folks, it's exhausting to be relevant and in the finals every year. I don't know if I can take it anymore. It's what happens when you're dating a supermodel. She's got leverage too. She's got a little leverage. You want to get married, she's like, I got my options. She's got it. Gisele Bündchen has a career too. Tom Brady doesn't have all the leverage. Yes, it's exhausting being in the finals.
That's a great. Is it easier to date a fox or a mediocre looking woman? You got to be on your game when you're dating a beauty queen.
That's right.
Be able to pivot.
Yeah, that's right. Look, this is no question. You know, LeBron is high maintenance. No doubt about it. But this comes with the territory of any successful team.
Kobe?
When it ended, look, after Kobe's run.
Don't lose it, Jay.
Why don't we
Hold on. No, I won't even go to Kobe. Michael Jordan and the Bulls dynasty. It ended badly because Phil Jackson and Jordan couldn't get along with Jerry Krause. Jordan was willing to play another year, but Krause ran him out.
Would do? You know what LeBron? 6 titles and then we fall apart?
No,
great.
But it was 3-3. Jordan had to leave. Kobe, Shaq. It ended
still
ugly.
6 titles.
When
They got
Dwayne
one
Wade
in
left
Cleveland.
Miami, it was ugly till he came back. Chris Bosh is mad at him because they wouldn't clear. Like, successful runs end badly. After Larry Bird was gone, drought.
By the way, success in anything, it's intense, it's hard. I mean, it's hard having LeBron in the clubhouse.
It seemed like this was a seed planted. This set the momentum for free agency. This story. That's exactly what it feels like. Look, is LeBron the problem? Okay, I'm the problem. Okay, I'm no longer here. That's what that feels like to me.
So LeBron's side plants it?
I don't know who planted it, but it's somebody fingerprints from somebody's campus all over that. Because that's his mans and them. That's Brian, Brian Windhorst. That's his guy.
Not quite his guy.
All
And I
right.
don't think LeBron and these guys planted this. But listen, why are we kidding ourselves? Michael Jordan produced 6 titles with one organization. Magic Johnson produced 5 titles with
Kobe
one
did what?
organization. Kobe did it one organization, 5 titles. Larry Bird got 3 titles, right, in Boston. LeBron's got 1 title in Cleveland and more headaches in Cleveland than titles.
Is it
Yeah,
worth that
there's a-
title?
By the,
First title in 52 years in any
yeah,
sport.
by the way,
Definitely
there's a reason
one of the
why
best
those other
sports
guys
stories.
stayed there. Because Boston and the Lakers, they're not historically dysfunctional. LeBron had to leave. If you take LeBron out of the Cavs last 20 years,
Oh, my.
outside of Donald Sterling and the Clippers, it's the worst organization in the NBA.
He compares himself to Michael Jordan. What are the Bulls without Michael Jordan?
Oh, they weren't
Nothing.
great, but they were mediocre. They weren't a mess. They weren't embarrassing.
What was more fatiguing, the 19 games they won the year before he got there, or the 25? I mean, really, that's more fatiguing.
That's not the conversation.
Hurt my eyes
The
watching.
conversation is where LeBron shows up, eventually he wears you out. Everybody around him. He's high maintenance. More high maintenance than the only one I'd put on his level is Kobe, because Kobe ran off Shaq and that was foolish. But I would put him on that same level as Kobe. And this is part of the legacy too. And I don't think Jordan was this kind of a headache. I don't think Magic was. I don't think Bird was. This is a blemish on LeBron that he consistent wherever he goes in Miami. Oh, we're gonna
But
win
you-
6
you
titles,
deliver
7 titles.
championships.
Yeah.
And
They delivered 2 in 4 years.
That's pretty good.
Cleveland got his first championship in more than half a
pretty good.
century. I mean, come on.
okay, so now we're down to pretty good. So that's what we're pretty good.
That's the standard?
That's the standard for LeBron James. He's going after Michael Jordan. He's going after Bill Russell. He's going after Kareem. And the standard, well, that's pretty good.
How much of this, too, though, let's be honest, I think some of this is the age we live in. If Michael
Thank
Jordan was
you.
gambling in Atlantic
Yeah.
City the night before playoff games, you don't think in the age of social media, Twitter, 24-hour
Did
news
Scottie Pippen
cycle.
leave? Did Scottie Pippen leave because he was tired of Michael?
That's-
I'm not talking about the
that's what-
gambling.
Shaq
I'm not talking about
left
social
Kobe.
media.
Shaq, Shaq and Kobe had
There you
problems.
go.
I mean,
Headaches.
it happens.
Headaches. Kobe's a headache.
Magic Johnson got coaches fired or a
Now
coach
you're talking
fired.
about Kobe. Did James Worthy leave him? Did Kareem leave
Yeah, but
him?
it was a different
it wasn't
time then.
as much
It was a
mobility
different
back then.
time then. Players weren't as mobile. That was really a stigma. Listen, divorce in the 50s was a stigma. People
ain't
get
free
divorced now,
agent-
it's not a stigma.
This ain't free agency. This is Kyrie went up to the front office and said, hey, get me the hell out of here or I may sit out and milk
Yeah,
this injury.
and he thinks
it wasn't
the-
about free agency.
He thinks the world's flat. He can be kooky Madookie. Maybe that's Kyrie.
He's sitting on the bench on a team that's kicking LeBron's butt right now. He may be proven right. Kyrie could end up with more titles than LeBron. Then what would you say?
Wherever LeBron goes, he accounts for 50 wins and a conference appearance.
And 50 headaches. That's my. And
I'll
again,
take it,
It's
though.
worth it.
Right?
I can't
Y'all got-
relate to high maintenance because I am so low maintenance. So I just can't
Y'all got
relate.
stock in Tylenol. That's all.
You're gonna tell me you weren't a headache when you were dominating at
Eccentric.
Ball State?
Yeah. All right, welcome back. Chris Broussard, joined now by Super Bowl champ Mark Schlereth. Let's move to the National Football League, where Jerry Richardson has sold the Carolina Panthers to hedge fund billionaire Dave Tepper for a record $2.275 billion. Tepper's reportedly paying cash for the team in what's the most expensive sports franchise purchase ever. But the next 2 on that list are actually NBA teams, Houston Rockets, LA Clippers, fetching nearly the same price as the Panthers and far more than a couple of other NFL teams. Whitlock, is this proof the NBA It's catching up to the National Football League.
Yeah, listen, I'm not gonna, and I'm a football guy, but I'm not gonna sit here and be dishonest. I do think this is significant that the Carolina Panthers, are basically selling for the same price as the Clippers and the Rockets. That's kind of shocking to me. I'll add this caveat. I don't think they sold the team for as much money as they possibly could. And I think that's because they wanted David Tepper fully in their fraternity. He was a minority owner with the Rooney family and the Steelers, and I think that's the path to get into the full fraternity group of NFL ownership. And so they cut him a deal that makes sense for him and maybe didn't get as much money as they could have.
I think it's this simple. The NBA is a global brand. They're Starbucks. The NFL is a massive domestic brand. They're Walmart. So on a selling the franchise basis, global can elevate a franchise. Now, remember, in America, you watch a TV show, there's hamburger ads. But globally, rice is more consumed. So the question is, where are NFL games broadcast? In America. Fox, CBS, ABC, NFL, ESPN. NFL in this country is a much bigger deal. But if you're talking about selling something and the global outreach, that's where the NBA makes up a lot of ground.
That's a good point. I think, look, I've said it before, 20, 25 years, I think the NBA could be even with the NFL or above it. You know, when you look at the concussion problems with the NFL, younger people aren't playing it as much. And to your point, the global brand of the NBA versus NFL, we didn't see the NBA even passing baseball. We didn't see the NFL passing football years ago. I think the NBA could eventually become America's top sport.
I will say this. I think we're, to some degree, comparing apples to oranges because you're talking about Houston, the fourth biggest market in the United States. You're talking about L.A., the biggest or second biggest market in the United States. And you're talking about the Carolina Panthers. What are they, the 28th market in the National Football League or the 25th market in the National Football League? So we're talking about a much smaller market. So if it was the Houston Texans, are we talking about the Texans? Are we talking about the L.A. Rams? If we were to sell those two, what would those franchises be worth? So I think there's some issue there. I'm with you in 25 years from now because the NFL is dealing with serious issues right now.
Yeah.
And so 25 years from now, where will we be? I'm not 100% sure. They're trying to make it more, to your point, more of a global sport.
They are. The NFL has two big advantages. We gamble on football. And gambling in this past week went from big to huge. Secondly, the NBA is a star-driven league. LeBron's one of those once-a-generation, once-a-decade players. Is there a next LeBron? We thought Andrew Wiggins would, we thought Karl Anthony Towns would be, we thought Anthony Davis would be. So could I argue, we always talk about the NFL's in a bubble and reality. NBA could be in a little bit of a bubble now. We got a dynasty. We got LeBron. I think the NFL is always going to be bigger in my lifetime than the NBA, but I do think the global outreach is the strength of the NBA over football.
Here's one of the things that's really interesting about this dynamic is we live in a time where never before have we been so narcissistic as a society. Right? Now, you want to go be seen? Go to an NBA game, right?
Yeah.
You get to be that in-game experience. This is one of the issues with the NFL right now. There's not a truly in-game experience. They're having trouble getting fans to the stadiums.
It's better on TV.
Well, it's better on TV, and you're not part of it. In the NBA, man, you can sit courtside if you got the flow. You can sit courtside, and you can get all the cameras on you, and it can be an event to go to this. Gambling could be interesting for the NFL when it comes to what it brings to the stadium experience. Are there bets? Are there things going on in the game now through apps, through the teams, where you can actually be engaged and you can only do it at the stadium? That'll be the next kind of, how are we going to get this thing done?
And Chris, I get the narrative that 20, 25 years from now, the NBA may, but I really hope not. And I hope, I've been thinking for the past 6 months to a year, I think one of the problems football has is no one has taken the time to set the narrative straight in full perspective about what football represents, why it's important to America, why it's important to African Americans, and just why football is such a great game. And for the last 6, 7 months, I've been kicking myself. I feel like this is something I'm going to try to take on to try to explain to people why football is the greatest game.
That's your first book.
And why it's important to America. Nothing brings us together across racial, economic lines like football. Nothing provides more opportunity for guys like me that started out in the hood or started out from poor working class environment. Nothing is better than football, and I want to take the time to explain that to people because that's the media narrative, I think, is out of control and out of context about football. And I keep looking around, why doesn't the NFL do this? And then I actually thought, well, I'm the one that loves football. Right. I'm the writer. Why don't I do it?
Look, I'm with you on football. I mean, football was my favorite sport growing up, but why do you think football can bring people together more than basketball? I'm just wondering. I think
because
basketball would do the same thing.
More people play football.
Just
There's
more
22
guys more
out on the
there's
field.
more, okay.
There's 22 guys out on the field. And again, the thing about
you know what? You're not restricted by being 6'8" either. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like to me, the greatest greatest
short guy, tall guy.
You better be.
But
be
to me, the greatest athletes in the world play in the NBA. Like, I've never seen guys that have that kind of athleticism, that kind of speed, that kind of quickness up and down the court.
And they're
all 6'9". You're like, LeBron James is 6'8". Anybody can play in the NFL. I've always said this, and I talked to the PA about this. We need to embrace it. Hey, there's only 1,700 people in the world that are crazy enough to play this game. You may not be one of them.
Well, you were from Alaska.
And that's okay.
Mark.
That's okay.
No
Alaska, went to college in Idaho.
Right.
And was a Super Bowl winner. Like, that story doesn't happen a ton in the NBA.
All right, welcome back. Mark Schlereth is back, and we're joined now by the founder of the Big Lead, Jason McIntyre. Let's move to New England, where the Patriot way appears to be in turmoil. And at least one guy, Eagles offensive lineman Lane Johnson, is celebrating. Johnson called the Patriots a fear-based organization after beating them in the Super Bowl back in February. And this week, he made it clear he's still worked up about how they approach the game.
Here's what pissed me off. The Patriots, obviously, I respect their coach. I respect Bill. I respect Tom Brady. But just because the way they won the Super Bowls, the Patriot way, is that how everybody else is supposed to do the same thing? No, it's not. I got mad at the arrogance by them. There's obviously some stuff behind closed doors. Their owner talked to our owner. Bill talked to our head coach for the game. I'm not going to say it, but, a lot of kind of built up to that. And I just got tired of hearing about it, man.
Colin, do the Patriots have an image problem around the league?
No, Philadelphia's got a won't shut up problem. I mean, time out. 18 years of wonderful dynasty. These guys win a championship, chatter, 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 chatter. Time out. You know what they are? They're Seattle. They come in, and it's like, pow. Great line play. Control the line of scrimmage. They got this new young quarterback. They got this coach, and everybody's kind of like it. And, they win a championship. They're doing a little politics, doing a lot of talking. Guess what happened to Seattle? Couple injuries later, couple guys move on. They're picked for third in their division. This feels like Seattle. They get hot. They're the new cool toy. Chatter, chatter, chatter. Where are the Seahawks now? Because I know for 18 years, New England didn't say squat.
I would agree with you, except for the fact there seem to be ex-Patriots and current Patriots who agree with Lane Johnson. Hey, what did Danny Amendola go off and have fun now? Go out and enjoy the game, actually. I know it's a nightmare over here. You got Tom Brady not participating in workouts. Colin, all of this reverts back to Malcolm Butler. When he starts talking about arrogance, because, again, I don't believe Belichick was talking smack before the game. Peterson may have lied to his team and said, you know what Belichick said, blah, blah, blah. But the arrogance that he's talking about is like, oh, man, Belichick thought he could sit Malcolm Butler and prove this point. That's how little respect he had. That's how much arrogance and belief he had in his system and his way. And it blew up in their face. And Lane Johnson celebrated, and the rest of the league, because what Lane Johnson is basically saying, all these other teams trying to mimic the Bill Belichick way. I don't want that. Let Bill Belichick can do it that way, but not every coach needs to embrace their inner Bill Belichick and be that kind of a arrogant control freak as Bill Belichick. I think they got a problem.
Any coach who isn't who he is. Like, look at Bill Belichick's tree. Once those guys leave the fold of the New England Patriots and go be head coaches elsewhere, has anybody had success? Has any guy gone out and had success? So the issue that you get into is, as a player, when you're sitting in a locker room and you're listening to a guy deliver and try to command the room, if that guy isn't authentic, if he's not who he is, if you're like, oh, my Lord, here he goes, he's trying to be Belichick, like, automatically you're going to tune out. So the biggest key here, from Lane Johnson's point of view, is you got to be you. Whatever you are. And let's face it, I mean, his coach played for, 18 years in the league. So he understands. Peterson understands that aspect. Here's the thing that Lane Johnson went on to say that we didn't have the sound on. I'd rather have fun winning a Super Bowl, singular, than be miserable winning 5.
Oh, come on.
You know what? I'd rather be miserable winning 5. And let me
Yes.
tell you, all these guys that say, oh, now we can go have fun. Let me tell you what's not fun. Showing up to the facility in December and you're 3 and 10 or whatever. You know, that ain't fun. That's miserable. I would rather be grinding and rather know that every week I'm going to go out here and I'm going to open a can of whoop ass on somebody. That's what I'd be rather.
Philly's gotten annoying fast.
But he's got a point, guys. There's an image issue with the Patriots. They're cheaters, right? Spygate, Deflategate, the Patriot way, as you eloquently pointed out. You know what the Patriot way is? Hey, we don't want to pay you on defense. So Vince Wilfork, see ya. Richard Seymour, we'll trade you. Malcolm Butler, bye. You know, they say goodbye to all these good defenders. But here's the thing. I don't think there's anything really wrong with that. That's how Bill Belichick runs his ship. And as you said, 18 years, bunch of Super Bowls. They're contending every year. So both can be true, right? They have an image issue, but they're also winning. So is there really a problem?
It's never been pro player. So are we surprised in year 18 there's a little pushback from the employees? No, not really. I mean, by the way, Walmart runs a business. A few years ago, they got some pushback. They want to unionize. The employees are like, we're not getting what we should get. Man, when you run a conglomerate, when you run a powerhouse, sometimes the employees push back a little.
I know this. When guys are tired in year 10 and haven't sniffed a playoff run, you know where they'll take less money to go to? The New England Patriots, because they know they're going to have a chance to win a championship.
Get that
and
ring.
I've talked to tons of guys that played for them. Aqib Talib. I talked to Aqib Talib just as he was on his way out of Denver. There's 2 places he wanted to go. He wanted to go with Wade Phillips in L.A. or back to go play with Bill Belichick in New England.
Right.
Those are the 2 places he wanted to be.
Elsewhere in the NFL, everybody's talking about this week's Supreme Court ruling that opened the door for legalized sports gambling. Peter King outlined some of the negatives gambling could bring to the NFL, like issues surrounding players betting. Pro Football Talk says betting could force positive changes like full-time officials and enhanced replay. Whitlock, you think gambling will cause the NFL to make drastic changes?
Well, if you consider full-time refs a drastic change, and that is, I think that's a good drastic change. I've wanted full-time refs. I think Florio got into his piece about using a ref perhaps in the instant replay booth who's a part of the officiating crew and communicating with the officiating crew down on the field. That's something I've been talking about for years. Use all of the technology. These officials need help from a guy that's looking at all the camera angles. Some of that view is far better than being on the field. I think the gambling thing could initiate some positives, influence and change, but Peter King, I think, raises some points. It also is going to raise some concerns in terms of players potentially gambling or more corruption.
You know, I think legalized sports gambling is like marijuana legalization. People who are not pot smokers don't start. People who smoke it all day still smoke it all day. And the casual pot smoker still buys it casually, just from a more legitimate place of purchase. Is that my sister's never going to bet football. I'm going to bet it occasionally. And the guy in Hoboken who you think's a degenerate is still going to be a degenerate. I think what happens is there's always this fear-based, oh, the world, speed limit's going to 70, we're all going to die. car manufacturers make better cars, car deaths go down. What happens is manufacturers, commerce regulates, the bad goes out, it gets more formidable, more legitimate. I think sports gambling, anybody who wanted to do it is doing it. I think if anything, it will tighten up the NFL, tighten up officiating, tighten up replay. I think that's a win.
I think it's a little being overblown, just a tad, guys, about the whole gambling stuff. First of all, the states themselves have to take the next step. The leagues have to get on board with the states to make sure that the integrity tax is all lined up. I mean, I know it's the offseason, right? The free agency's done in the NFL. The draft is done. It's kind of the downtime. So this is a fun story to talk about. But in reality, drastic changes, all the changes you talked about, they should already be in place, right? Full-time refs. I mean, instant replays getting tweaked every year. So when the question says drastic changes, I don't think we're seeing anything.
Full-time refs doesn't feel drastic.
But full-time refs, it was the refs that didn't want to go to be full-time refs, right? It wasn't the league. The league wanted full-time refs. The refs didn't want it. Can I get the shot over Jason's shoulder? If we can just get rid of that box, the histrionics of going to that sideline when the call is made in New York, that would make me really, that would be drastic enough change for me.
Yes.
Right. I hate instant replay. I've always hated instant replay. I think it's ridiculous. Like, oh, we can review this, but we can't review this. We can review this, but we can't review a penalty.
Do you think gambling will change it?
You know what? I hope it's consistent. Like, I hope that what's a catch in game A is also a catch in game B. That whoever in New York is looking at those things, the inconsistency is what drives me crazy. But I'm a player, so I look at it from the standpoint of I have never lost a game on one play. You know, I may have lost a game because a guy dropped the ball, but there were 17 other plays in that game, and that drives me crazy.
Stop you there.
Yeah,
you're a player. You've never been a gambler. As a gambler,
right,
I've lost money on one play.
Pittsburgh Steelers last
There have been plays that turn on a dime if you're a gambler. And so I think the NFL and all these sports leagues are going to be under more scrutiny and more pressure to make sure the integrity of their games is crystal clear. We don't want any Tim Donahue's. We don't want to hear about any players that are perhaps maybe I'm making $700,000 and I'm not satisfied because I'm trying to keep up with the guys on my team that are making $5 million and they start cutting corners. So
I worry more in sports gambling with Division II basketball. NFL games are televised. The guys are well compensated. Division II basketball, a kid barely is getting through, whatever, William and Mary or some. By the way, those games aren't televised. You know, nothing against William and Mary, Mary or William. But the point is, that's where, hey, 10,000 line. No, there's a reason years and years ago Vegas sportsbooks stopped putting lines on Ivy League football because 9 guys bet it in Hoboken and they beat the books. Yeah, like the small college sports, I think there could be corruption. All right, welcome back. Chris Broussard, Jason McIntyre here. Let's move to the Western Conference Finals. Whole bunch of fun. Resumed tonight in Houston after getting overwhelmed by the Warriors in Game 1. At home, Rockets coach Mike D'Antoni said his team needs to ignore the noise and stick to their game plan. But his own players appear to be contradicting him. Eric Gordon saying team needs to play less iso ball, an idea James Harden seemed to echo.
We're in this together, and I can't do it by myself. And we need everybody to be at their top play, and so whether it's CP, whether it's Eric, whether it's Tuck, and we just open up and just talk about the game, talk about things that we see, that they see from their angle. We can get better on things that they saw that actually worked, and figure it out.
All right, Whitlock, you worried about the Rockets' mindset heading into Game 2?
Yeah, a little bit, because I do think there's a bit of confusion about what they're going to do. I hear James Harden's comments, and he may say, hey, we had a discussion and we're talking, and that sounds different than Mike D'Antoni. We are who we are. This is what we do. It's just one game, blah, blah, blah. I think if we get to the third quarter and things aren't going well, Chris Paul is going to start, I think, inflicting his will or in direction on this team. And Chris Paul right now, I think, is saying that, kind of stay the course, stay the course. I think that all goes away if they're down in the third quarter of this game. And I think moving forward, they'll realize that was a nice little regular season offense, but it doesn't work at this time of the year.
Yeah, rigid and stubborn rarely win. in any business. And I may be reaching here. You guys just react to this. There's been a couple of moments with CP3 and Harden. There was a moment in the Utah series. This goes back to you can see a divorce before it happens. In that series, Utah was clearly the better team. And there was that little moment. And I'm like, they're intense in this series with a rookie, with Rudy Gobert, with Joe Ingles. It was just a little moment. Okay, and that was a series they controlled. To Jason's point, they're down 11 in the third tonight. That's magnified. Am I nuts on that?
Yeah, look, that happens. I mean, you play sports, you get in arguments with your team.
You never slapped my hand on this show.
Chris Paul is gonna Chris Paul.
Yeah.
At the end of the day.
I'm not going to jump on the Rockets, let's crush the Rockets right now. I actually think both D'Antoni and the players are right, and here's why. D'Antoni said we have to stick to who we are. They didn't do that in game one. They ran 45 isolation plays in game one. That's the most any team in the NBA has run in 5 years. They averaged 26 a game.
So
now that's still most in the league, but they doubled up. They got and remember I said on the show yesterday, Golden State can bait you into isolation basketball because they switch everything so you go one-on-one. They just have to stick to their game plan. That's why Eric Gordon was like, I'm not getting the ball. We got to run less ISO, because in the regular season, even though it was a lot of ISO, it wasn't as much as game one. So I think they just need to play the way they played in the regular season and not get too ISO heavy as they did in game one.
I would use fragile. I think that's their mindset right now. When after one loss, that's all it took. One really bad fourth quarter where you ran into Kevin Durant and Klay Thompson, and everybody's on the wrong page. As you guys are saying, maybe the third quarter tonight, if it's dicey, I'm thinking first quarter. Honestly, if it gets ugly early, Chris Paul's history. Kenyon Martin was on this show last week and said some stories, not on the show, but off stage, about him and Chris Paul and how Chris Paul treats his teammates. And it's one of those situations where you saw that. I hadn't seen that video with James Harden and Chris Paul. Chris, I know you're chalking that up as nothing. That's a Salt Lake City, Utah Jazz versus the Rockets,
okay? It's a playoff game.
This is the Warriors, maybe the greatest team of all time. You're talking about potentially unraveling at home in game two. I'm worried about the Rockets tonight, guys.
All right, to the Cavaliers, who weren't just losers on the court last night, but also at the NBA's draft lottery, where the first-round pick they got from the Celtics in the Kyrie Irving trade, which they hoped would fall in the top three, fell all the way to number 8. The pick was the last piece of business from the Kyrie trade, and once you account for some midseason trades, Cleveland ended up flipping their second-best player for Jordan Clarkson, Larry Nance Jr., Rodney Hood, and the number 8 pick in this upcoming draft. Cowherd, was this trade officially a disaster for Cleveland?
Well, what it illustrated is what I think we all know. You can go back 50 years in the NBA. 4 C's don't equal an A. They just don't. I mean, the Kareem trade in Milwaukee to the Lakers was about as bountiful for the team losing a star as any ever. Shaq to Miami, the Lakers got good players. Our friend Caron Butler, I think, was part of that. Man, when you give up a star, Jason, this is a star-driven league. In the NFL, it's different. You give me a left guard, a right corner, a Mike.
Yeah, this ain't Herschel Walker.
In the NBA, Kyrie is worth, there's just very few Kyries.
I'm not ready to call it a disaster because I still want to see what happens with the 8th pick. I want to see who they get. Who knows? These young kids, anywhere in the top 15 of the draft, to me, can become a superstar. So I'm not ready to give all the way up on it.
Yeah, I'm with Jason on this. I mean, look, they lost the trade, but disaster, I'm not ready to go there. Kyrie Irving demanded a trade, threatened to have surgery and not play, and then is hurt anyway. Like, they could have kept Kyrie, and he might be hurt right now. And as you said, everybody's poo-pooing the 8th pick. Steph Curry was a 7th pick. Klay Thompson was a 12th pick. Donovan Mitchell was a 13th pick, so it happens today. So I just think that, you never know who they get. It's a deep draft, too. So it's still a lot to be
I'll
seen.
side with Cowherd and say this was a disaster. When you look at Jordan Clarkson not even getting off the bench in game 2, I mean, that was a guy who looked good in the regular season. Whitlock, I'm going to ask you this one. When you look at how this trade is shaken out, if you're LeBron James, here it is, end of the season's over. You look at Kobe Altman. Well, let's see. That first trade for Kyrie didn't really work. Mid-season stuff. Do I have any faith in Kobe Altman to stick around here and help me rebuild the Cleveland Cavaliers?
And if I'm Kobe Altman, I'd look back and say, do I have any faith in LeBron James? If I provide him with young players, will he get along with them to the point they can stay here and be on the team?
Come on, if they were
Kyrie Irving was 24 years old, 25 years old, and LeBron ran him out.
You don't think Kyrie had a little diva quality? He was a diva before LeBron got there.
If Tamron Hall's a diva, I'm dealing with it. I'm dealing with it. And he should have dealt with Kyrie Irving.
On Kyrie's side, too.
What?
LeBron, you could say if he's Halle Berry, I'm dealing with it. I mean, you getting the champ. They could, look, the bottom line, they could have kept Kyrie. Were they going to beat Golden State with Kyrie?
No.
Probably not. So LeBron still might have been out of there. Yeah. So I don't even think the LeBron thing has to factor into it because he probably was on his way out anyway.
By the way, Rodney Hood, Jordan Clarkson, and Larry Nance Jr. scored 2 more points than Kyrie Irving last night. That's trouble. That is trouble.
That might be on the relegator more than the elevators. The relegator.
Well, Jordan didn't even play.
I understand. Relegated to a bench player.
Come on.
The relegator.
One of these days, we're going to do a segment with the LeBron lover.
I was going to say
something nice about it.
LeBron.
Maybe tomorrow we'll try that.
Welcome back. Time for last call to Boston, where J.R. Smith earned a flagrant 1 last night for shoving Al Horford in the back while he was in midair. After the game, Marcus Smart said J.R. is known for his dirty plays, but reportedly the NBA won't discipline him. Cowherd, should he have been suspended?
I'd say no. I think it's close. I don't like that. When Al wasn't fully in the air when he pushed him, Al was just starting to jump. I don't love that play. I've defended J.R. Smith and his kookiness before. I could have gone either way. I would have if I ran the league. I'd say no, but I don't like it at all.
My sources in Boston told me before the show that Danny Ainge and Brad Stevens pleaded with Adam Silver not to suspend J.R. Smith to make sure that he's available on Saturday. So this is exactly what the Celtics wanted. They want J.R. Smith out on the court. This is actually bad news for Cleveland, and LeBron, I think, has filed an objection to the ruling. All right, to Dallas, where Cole Beasley's rap album, the autobiography, dropped this week and is climbing up the iTunes charts, currently sitting at number 61 overall and number 13 for album releases in May. Cowherd, are you shocked that Cole Beasley is the next Eminem?
I think he's more G-Eazy.
G-Eazy?
Yeah.
Uh-huh. Look, people don't think I'm joking. There is a little white rapper called Little Dicky that I think is the greatest thing going. He's hilarious. His raps are good. I listened to some Cole Beasley before today's show.
What do you think?
I thought he was okay. And far better than me. I'm not dissing Cole Beasley, but I just thought he was okay.
How about Cole Easy?
Cole, that is a better name, Cole Easy. That's what he should call himself. That's a good idea.
You are shocked I gave a reference, aren't you?
Yeah. Who'd you say? G-Eazy?
G-Eazy.
G-Eazy.
Why don't you listen to some of that tonight?
All right.